0.
Weekend confirmed.
Ignition. Liftoff.
Hey everyone, this is your Weekend Confirmed question of the week. I'm Xav de Matos. This week from Twitter, Nibble asks, would a full hardware-based backwards compatibility be a decisive factor for you when choosing the next console? It's a little confusing, the wording there, but he's just asking about backwards compatibility. I think that it's important, obviously, for the next generation for backwards compatibility. Maybe not for retail games, but here's where I have a problem. Xbox Live Arcade, PSN. I have spent so much money on those services for digital games that I can't bring physical media onto the next platform, that I really hope that there's a plan in place in order for all those digital games to be on the next hardware. Microsoft's next hardware, Sony's next hardware, even the Wii and the Virtual Console. There's just so much stuff on those platforms that you can't get at retail that you've purchased in order to want to play again. I want to play Bastion again. That game's amazing. I want to play Dishwasher, Dead Samurai, and Shadow Complex, a game I love. I don't want to lose those games. And it's really important for me as a consumer and someone who enjoys downloadable games and not being encumbered with all of this physical media everywhere for all these games, that I can carry that stuff over to the next generation. That's important to me. And so yeah, that would be a big factor for me. Now, would it mean that if the next Xbox or PS3 or PlayStation console or we didn't have that feature, I would just not buy it out of protest or something? I don't think that's true, because I still love games and I'm probably going to buy the next hardware regardless. But it is going to be something that will be super disappointing for me and a lot of people, that I would assume that because there's been such an emphasis on digital content in this generation, that stuff will carry over. If you think about last generation, Xbox Live Arcade shipped on a disc and it wasn't a big deal on the original Xbox. I mean, people probably don't even remember that it existed. And there was DLC that you bought that, that carried over if the game was backwards compatible. But of course, if you bought multiplayer content on the original Xbox, you can't use that stuff anymore because that service doesn't exist anymore. So that's a factor too. But this generation has put such an emphasis on this digital content that you have to assume, or I would hope, that is going to be a part of their plan. And if you look at something like the Vita, and coming from the PSP, there's still a lot of questions about that original PSP content. You have to rebuy that stuff on the PSN. There's some plans in Europe and Asia about how that stuff's going to work. I'm not entirely, off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly how it's going to work for North America. But as someone who bought the PSP Go, yeah, I was the guy who bought it. The problem with that system is that there was no plan put in place for the stuff that I own physical media of, and there was games that came out later that I wanted to play, like Crisis Core, that I could not play on the PSP Go because there was no digital copy of it. Looks like they're doing a better job with the Vita, and that stuff's going to be available on digital services as well. But it's really important that the backwards compatibility of the next generation focuses on giving us the content that we've already paid for, that we have no other access to. And the argument to be made that says, well, just hold on to your old Xbox or old PSN or PlayStation and just play it on those platforms, I don't think that argument can be made, because a lot of those services, Sony's especially, some of that stuff gets turned off. I mean, think about any EA game that you're playing online. After a few years, EA turns off the servers. So Battlefield 1943, for example, will stop working eventually. But I think it's important, and I think the next generation needs to focus on it. Thank you.
I don't know,
going to be impacted, and this also applies to the software, by how long it takes people to move over. What's the incentive to move over? Now, we've seen great sales numbers continue for the Xbox 360, so the announcement of a new Xbox is going to be an unknown. How quickly can we talk folks at 2K Games, at Ubisoft, at EA, into moving development teams from the 360 system, which was already an expensive system to develop